Wix Studio, the platform for agencies and enterprises to manage clients and projects with max efficiency, sharing Wix's SEO tech to help you drive growth.
Fix errors, waste, and issues in a couple of clicks. Get alerted whenever you're off track. Sign up at trueclicks.com.
Thanks very much, everyone. Try to stay awake if you can. It is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife. You are Jane Austen, and you've just completed what you hope will be the final draft of your masterpiece, Pride and Prejudice. Delighted with your work, you package the novel up and you send it off to the newly formed Standards and Clarity in Literature Board, a completely made-up division of the government created by me solely for the purposes of this presentation. Keen for Pride and Prejudice to be out there in the world and in the hands of your eager readers, you wait for the expected 5 to 10 days SLA for a response. Eventually, you receive a package in the post and you tear it open. You're confident that your novel has met all of the legal and compliance guidelines that you received from the Standards and Clarity and Literature Board when you first started out, and that any edits that are required will be minimal. You look at the first page, aghast. Please provide evidence that this is indeed a truth that is universally acknowledged. Is a single man the correct audience for the Good Wife product? Are we limiting our potential user base here? Is in possession of a good fortune plain English? Can we just say a rich man? And finally, add the disclaimer to ensure the customers shop around before making a commitment or a purchase. Deflated, you set about making the changes to your text. A few days later, having missed your original publication deadline, you resubmit your manuscript. The changes are accepted, the approval is signed off, and the truncated version of Pride and Prejudice makes its way out into the world. And unfortunately, because the first paragraph is now shit, no one reads any further. The book is forgotten, you jacken and all writing lark, and we are all collectively, as human beings, poorer for its absence in popular culture. Boo hiss. 30 odd years later, Herman Melville, working on Moby Dick, believes he's learned a lesson from your misfortune. He completes his doorstopping novel and he looks upon it with pride. In particular, he regards his first line, "Call me Ishmael." It's concise, it's simple, it's mysterious, it's tailored to draw the reader in with its simplicity, leading them into his complex masterworks. Surely the Standards and Clarity and Literature Board can have no problem with a line like this. The original title of this presentation was something along the lines of keeping your friends close. But I changed that early on because it obviously occurred to me that the continuation of that quote is, and your enemies closer. And I thought a little bit about how content creators and creatives can develop an adversarial relationship with the compliance, legal, and advertising standards teams that they work with, regardless of what industry they work in. And you can understand why. On the surface, the two have got very different goals. On one side, you've got a group of people that are trying to create content that is compelling, that's educational, and which meets whatever engagement and conversion metrics are being targeted on. And on the other hand, you've got another group of people who are telling them, you can't say this, you can't say that, and that they need to include usually very inelegantly worded warnings or clarifications within the body of the text. But the truth of the matter is that in certain industries, it's crucial that we work within the framework of regulatory bodies who oversee those particular industries. And so it's important that whether you're working agency side or you're freelance or you're working for a brand, that you build good relationships and working practices with the in-house teams who are responsible for reviewing and approving content against the regulations. That's why over the next 15 minutes or so, I'm going to show you 6 approaches that can make it easier for you to work within regulated industries while still retaining the ability to create compelling and engaging content. And those 6 points we're covering is knowing your regulators, understanding why the regulations are in place, matching the tone to your topic, building relationships with the right teams, dealing with warning and disclaimer text, and keeping an eye on the fundamentals. And while I've tried to keep these suggestions at a high enough level to work across different industries, there is a financial services slant to a lot of it, mainly because I've been working in financial services since 2006, and sometimes it's quite hard to think about anything else. So, without further ado, number one, know your regulators. It will help you massively when speaking to compliance, legal and advertising standards teams to show some familiarity with key regulators in your relevant industry. Now don't worry, you don't need to know the regulations off by heart, but by showing that you've done your homework regarding the various regulatory bodies who are responsible for the rules that the in-house team are interpreting, you will earn yourself automatically a lot of brownie points. Now, unfortunately, it's not as simple as one industry equals one regulator. That would be way too easy, and nothing about this is really easy. The regulators will massively depend on what product you're working on, which geographical location, and even then, you still might find yourself writing to meet the rules of multiple bodies in the same area. If we just take a look at some of the regulatory industries that are involved in key industries at the moment, you've got, for financial services in the UK, you've got the Financial Conduct Authority and the Prudential Regulation Authority. In Europe, you've got the European Systemic Risk Board, the European Banking Authority, the European Securities and Markets Authority, and, deep breath, the very snappily named European Insurance and Occupational Pension Authority. And then over in the States, you've got the Securities and Exchange Commission, the Bureau of Consumer Financial Protection, and the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve, with their very scary logos. I don't know, I find those very intimidating for some reason. So we'll move on nice and quickly on that. We'll have a quick look at the pharmaceutical industry. In the UK, we've got the Medicines and Healthcare Regulatory Agency. Europe, the European Medicines Agency, and the US FDA and the USP, whose logos are moderately less threatening, I suppose, than their financial services counterparts. And then just very quickly on sort of gambling itself, you can tell I haven't really tried that hard on this, but you've got the Gambling Commission and the Advertising Standards Authority, the ASA. In Europe, you've got a number of regulatory bodies on a country-by-country basis, none of which I'm going to embarrass myself by attempting to pronounce here on stage. And then in the States, well, in the States, you've got a very tangled web of state-by-state laws, which should take way, way longer than we've got today to unpick. But the thing these bodies have got in common is that they're responsible for creating a framework of rules, standards, codes, policies, and best practices that govern what you can say, how you can say it, and who you can say it to. So it's key that you understand broadly the framework in which you're operating, and that you consult with compliance and legal teams regularly where available to understand the impact of these regulations and if and when they change. But there's one thing to simply work within the rules that you're given. There's another to understand why they're in place. The most important thing to realise with this is that it's not about stopping you doing business. In companies where this adversarial relationship is developed between, say, marketing and product and legal and compliance, it's very common to hear grumbles about legal not letting marketing do their job, or sarky references to the business prevention team. But if your product is well researched and appropriate to its target market, if you're coming from a genuine place, the regulators don't want to prevent you from going to market. I mean, we could go on for ages about the reasons the various rules, regulations and regulatory bodies have been put into place around these industries. But the truth of the matter can really be boiled down to one thing. And that's it's about making sure that we do the right thing. That's the right thing by our customers, the right thing by our business, and the right thing by our industry. And to be honest with you, as long as you keep that in mind when you're creating any content, 95% of the time, you'll probably find yourself comfortably within the regulations. Now, the next 4 points are going to be a little bit more practical about how to approach your content and offer some suggestions about how to structure regulated content in a way that makes it more creative, clear, and digestible. And again, the examples here are going to be very financial services focused, but I hope you can apply some of these points to some of the other industries that we've spoken about or that you work within. First, we're going to talk about tone, and I want to spend a little bit of time illustrating how customers often feel when they're making financial decisions so we can understand the key areas where we need to focus our content. Now, one of the first things we need to do with those customers is build confidence. Why do we need to do that? Well, according to research from Standard Life, 33% of consumers feel they've made poor financial decisions in the last 2 years. 13% feel alone when thinking about their finances. 42% would value extra guidance and advice on their finances. 12% are unsure where to go for support when thinking about their finances. And when you break down the percentages of users who feel they've made a poor decision by product type, it breaks down as 13% for savings, around 10% for debt, 8% for investments, and 7% for pensions. Now, maybe some of these numbers are relatively small, but it still adds up to a relatively large number of people who are looking for a level of sort of education and reassurance that they're making the right decision. And they've come to your content for that information. So you owe it to yourself and you owe it to them to understand the concerns your customers and prospective customers have, and to ensure that you strike the right balance in the tone of any content you create. What else are they looking for? They're looking for support. As I've said, these users have got a number of concerns and questions around the decision that they're looking to make. And those numbers on the previous slide, that's only people who admit to a level of uncertainty. The worst thing a consumer can do is make an important decision from a place of misguided confidence. So even if the customer is not asking the questions themselves, we need to make sure that we answer the core queries that a prospect might have when they're thinking about taking out a product. And again, the model I'm about to show you is based on financial services, but it can be applied to other decisions. So let's have a look at the kind of questions that people are asking themselves when they're thinking about taking a financial product. Well, they're asking themselves, what are the benefits? Why do I need this product? Will it meet the key drivers that I have for taking it out? They're asking themselves, what are the costs? Is it one-off costs or ongoing? Are the payments fixed or not? Will I be able to afford it in the future if my circumstances change? What is the commitment? How long is the term or set period or age? What actions do I need to take? When do I need to make payments? There are some financial products like a pension annuity that when you select it, that will be in place for the rest of your life, whether that's 10, 20, 30 years. You can't change it once the initial commitment is made, and you can transfer it to another provider. So you need to make sure that any customer understands that. Which brings us very nicely to, is it flexible? Once I've taken out the product, can the product change? If I no longer need it, can I cancel it? Will I get any money back? What are the risks? Do I fully understand if there's a material danger to take out this product? Could I lose money? What's the social impact? This is increasingly important to people. Does the product have any detrimental impact on the environment, either directly or indirectly? For example, is any of the investment money going to oil companies or arms manufacturers? Does this product align with my personal values? Do I understand it? It's kind of the crux of the whole thing. When it comes down to it, do I fully comprehend everything that I've read so far? Do I need any advice and support making this decision? And if I do, where can I get that advice and support? And lastly, what kind of service level will I receive? Once I make a commitment, how will the company respond to any queries or concerns that I have? What are the options available to me if I need to escalate any concerns or queries that I have? For any product or service that you're creating or promoting, create a list of the questions that your reader will be asking themselves or your viewer will be asking themselves, and inform that list with customer research. Answer those questions, and you can't really go that far wrong. But what about the people whose job it is to tell you where you have gone wrong? These legal and compliance teams who often seem to sit removed from the creative side of the business. The important thing there is to get to know them and get to know them quickly and get to know them directly. Often the feedback loop will look something a little bit like this. The brief will come into your agency or team or freelancer inbox. The brief is given to your content author who writes a draft. That draft goes to the business content who passes it on to product reviewers who comment and then send it, often sight unseen by the people that started this, back to the compliance teams or legal teams or advertising standards teams or whatever they're called. And it then loops back through the same number of people to the originator. Problem is, by the time it gets back to that content author who needs to make the changes, the detail and reasoning behind those changes has been diluted to the extent that the author is not necessarily clear what the change is or what the reasoning is behind it. The way to deal with that would ideally be cutting out the middleman. But anyone that's sort of dealt with a largish organisation knows that that's not realistic or practical. But ideally, if possible, you want to try and build a direct relationship with the departments who are responsible for interpreting the regulations. That will make your life significantly easier. Don't filter it through marketing, don't filter it through product. Try and speak to them directly. If possible, get a picture of the kinds of challenges that they commonly see. Try and work through potential sticking points before you submit your first piece of content, and definitely before you've got a deadline looming. Get to know their service levels so you can factor that into your planning. Understand if there are any changes coming down the pipeline that might affect future content ideas. This is harder to do if you're agency side or freelancer side, but that is still possible. Speak to your business contact, see if you can arrange a meeting with the relevant team. Spend a bit of time, like I say, listening to their side of things and illustrate, as I mentioned earlier on, that you understand the regulatory framework that they're working in. The best content agencies that I've worked with down the years have made this effort, and it's always resulted in improved relationships and shorter approval times or approval cycles for content. This next section is about warnings, but it could apply to any sort of regulatory or disclaimer text that you need to work into your copy. It's a fairly specific example, but hopefully you can take some sort of guidance from it. So we often find within financial services a distinction being drawn between product features and what's known as warning copy, like your home could be repossessed if you don't keep up payments, that kind of thing. And while there's obviously a real need for many of these warnings, like the one I've just mentioned, to be highlighted and given additional prominence above the rest of the copy, a lot of the stuff that we class this way are actually just product features, and we should be smarter about how we work those features into the copy. Here's a common example of how this can be often laid out. And I appreciate that this copy may be a little small for some of you, depending on what screen you're looking at or how far away you are, but what it says is less important than how it's laid out. So on the left-hand side, we've got features with nice green tick boxes next to them. Open an account from just £10 and tax-efficient savings. And on the right, we've got the very euphemistically named considerations. Value can decrease as well as increase. Tax advantages depend on individual circumstances. And next to those, we've got nice, scary red crosses to try and put everybody off. So what's wrong with this? Well, those crosses for one thing. You're positioning this feature as a negative before the user has even read the content. If they're scanning, this may or may not catch your eye, and it might even put them off. Next, it's dry. It's boring. It may as well have been ripped straight from the product documentation. It makes no effort whatsoever to engage the customer in the broader reasons of why these features are in place or what they are. And lastly, it's separated, it's split up. Sure, on the surface, this makes it appear more digestible. But what it also does is separate content that belongs together. For example, there's 2 points here that are relevant to tax, and they're separated, so the reader may not connect it to it. They might not even read both. So how can we do this better? This is the same content pulled together and broken up by headings and subheadings. And again, don't worry if it's a little bit small. We're about to drill down into each section in a bit more detail. So first, looking at the information about how to open an account. In the first draft, it's positioned as a simple fact, almost a limitation. But here, by adding a little bit of extra content, we position it as a flexible customer option. You decide how you want to open the account. Money is invested in stocks and shares. Again, we originally state this as a fact and make no effort to explain why we invest the money. Again, it's a little bit of extra copy here, helps us educate the reader and help them understand what our goal for doing this is. Investment warning, your money can go down as well as up. Now, this is an important disclaimer. This is for any investment product. This is a crucial piece of information that we must let the consumer know. But you know what? It's also totally normal behaviour for this kind of product. It's not just a scary element of our product, so we shouldn't position it as such. And then lastly, just looking at the tax content, this is really just about bringing it together to aid customer detail. It seems simple. One thing to avoid when you're doing this, most of you probably know what a shit sandwich is, but in case you don't, that's a shit sandwich. You got your positive point at the start, you got positive point at the end, and right in the middle, you've got all the excrement that you don't want to put anywhere else. And it's really easy to do. and it's best avoided where possible because everyone hates it. Look, I'm almost done. The last couple of points I want to leave you with, fairly basic. First one is, don't lose sight of the fundamentals. Whatever you're writing or creating, whoever you're writing or creating it for, make sure you approach the work with the same empathy, imagination, and depth of research as you would for a company with slightly strident regulations around it, and that will leave you in a pretty good position. Of course, the regulators will always have the last word. And that's okay. In fact, I'm going to give the last words of this presentation to the Financial Conduct Authority. See, they've got 3 core tenets by which content and promotions must abide. And even though they're intended as guidance for financial services industry, I think they're good practice when creating any content. Content must be clear, fair, and not misleading. And as long as you follow that approach, you really shouldn't have any real problem creating compelling content, even within heavily regulated industries. Thanks for listening and for staying awake.
Monthly reporting making you want to shove sharp things up your nose? Try Dragon Metrics, the all-in-one SEO software with mind-blowing reporting tools.
Demand Sphere. Limitless visual insights from the SERPs. Unlimited dashboards and users. Easy to use and easy to scale your growth to new levels.